Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Vijayendra Singh Tawar, Associate Professor in English. And presently, I have been posted at Government College, Gudha, in the Jammu district. In the series of video lectures, which is being prepared by me, today's lecture is meant for the students of class BA part 2nd, subject English literature, paper 1st, and we are going to have a talk on the topic critical appreciation of A.K. Ramanujan's famous poem, A River. I have given you its explanation and critical in Hindi. Now we will talk in English because we have chosen English as medium. And English literature means we should know how to write it in English. So first of all, we will begin with the introduction of the poet. The poet A.K. Ramanujan's full name is Attipat Krishnaswamy Ramanujan. He was born in 1929 and died 1993. He is regarded as one of the leading Indo-Anglian poets. Moreover, or it is believed by one and all that he is one of the members of the poetic trinity of Indo-Anglian poets, the other two being Nissim Ezgil and Kamala Das. First of all, let me explain you what is the meaning of Indo-Anglian. Indo-Anglian means those Indians who compose poems in English language. And there are many poets who compose their works in English. They are known as Indo-Anglian group. And if they are poets, then they are Indo-Anglian poets. So out of many poets, the three top poets are Kamala Das, Nissim Ezgil, and our present poet, A.K. Ramanujan. He was a scholar of Indian literature who wrote in both English and Kannada. Ramanujan wore many hats as an Indian poet, scholar, and author, those of a philologist, folklorist, translator, poet, playwright, means he was a versatile genius. He has shown or displayed his talent in many fields. His academic research ranged across 5 languages, means he knew 5 languages. He was a master of 5 languages. These languages were Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Sanskrit, and English. He published on both classical and modern variants of these literatures, and also argued strongly for giving local and non-standard dialects their due. This due respect was given by him to the local dialect words. He has been praised highly by critics. His art is almost perfect. The only fault that can be found with him is that his poetic output is too thin. It is he published a small number of poems. He has, to his credit, only 2 slender volumes of poetry. He is certainly one of the greatest masters of English language. Apart from his themes and the motifs in his poetry, he ranks very high among the Indo-Anglian poets for his use of the English language to express himself. He was a master of English language because he taught English in Chicago, where he settled in USA. He has shown a rare originality in the use of words, and he has shown an extraordinary talent of phrase making. His poems abound in, are filled with felicities of words and phrases. The idea is he knew how to read, how to write, how to select words so that reader find them pleasing, interesting, as he was a teacher or a professor of language in USA. Now let us come to about the poem. The poem, entitled A River, is one of the most well-known poems of A.K. Ramanujan. It was published in the Striders in 1966. The Strider is the name of anthology in which this poem was included. The river celebrated in the poem is the Vaikai. The Vaikai is a famous river in Tamil Nadu. It flows through Madurai. Just as in North India, there are many rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, or Saraswati. In the same way, in Tamil Nadu, this river is very famous river. And Madurai is a famous city, and it has for 2000 years, for 2000 years, the seat of Tamil culture. What Ramanujan here really wants to tell us is that although the annual flood in the river inspires poetry, it does not evoke any real sympathy from the authorities or even from the writers of the poems themselves for the sufferer. The idea is poets get inspiration and they compose poems when it is flooded. And there is flood in the river. But they do not show any sympathy for the victims of the flood. Nothing is done to protect human beings, animals, and houses against the damage which is done by the floodwaters. The poet begins the poem, he says, Madurai is a city of temples and poets. There are many poets and temples in the city. These poets have composed many poems about cities and temples. They have also written about the river Vaikai which flows through Madurai. Now the poet gives us another aspect of the river Vaikai. He says, during summer, this river is reduced to a very narrow stream flowing through the sand. Its water cannot pass through the water gates because of the piles of straw and women's hair which obstruct its flow. The idea is during summer season, there is a little quantity of water in the river, and even it does not cross simple obstructions. The bridges over this river are marked with many patches of repair. Those stones of the bridges, which become wet, begin to shine like sleeping crocodiles. The dry stones appear like huge water buffaloes whose hair has been cut, basking in the sun. These two similes, in which the dry stones and wet stones are compared, are marvelous, highly suggestive. They put the idea into mind clearly. None of the poets wrote about the drying of the rivers, that is during summer season. They wrote only of floods. A visitor, or maybe a poet, once happened to spend one day in Madurai when a flood in the river was imminent. He heard people everywhere talking about the level of water rising quickly. The people talked about the water rising over the steps leading to the river and the water rising on the bathing places. As people give their views that now the water level is rising, this has touched this this level, now it is dangerous, over the danger marks, etc. etc. They were talking like that. He also heard people talking about the flood water sweeping away 3 village houses, 1 pregnant woman, and a couple of cows almost every year. Means every year when there is a flood in the river, it causes certain damage of the human lives, property, and animals. And these poets just repeat what happened. They do not try to do something new. The new poets of the city, merely quoted the lines composed by the old ones about the floods, but they did not write about the calamities like drowning of women having twins. Means they do not concentrate on the sorrows and suffering and griefs of the victims. For example, here the reference is given to a woman who might have a twin, and the twins were identical and they drowned before coming into the world. The visitor said that there was enough water in the river to inspire the poets to compose poems, though only once in a year. Means when there is a flood, this river gives inspiration to poets, otherwise it does not give inspiration. Then during a short span of half an hour, the flood water carried away 3 village houses, a couple of cows, namely Gopi and one pregnant woman who was expecting similar or identical twins. The twins, although had no spots on their human skin, but they would have been made to wear an ornamental design woven in the linen so that they could be distinguished. The idea is the new poets also repeat the same thing which was stated by the old poets, that these are the damages done by the river flood. Certain human beings died, certain animals, certain properties, etc. etc. But nobody concentrate on the animals, say the name or whose animals were they, what were their names, how they died. Nobody, no poet concentrate or describe their real sorrow. We can say that it is a touching and poignant poem that is affecting the feeling greatly. But it is not worthy. The poet simply writes as an observer. Means from objective point of view, the poet presents what he sees, what he feels. He maintains an attitude of complete detachment. He is not personally attached with anybody. Pathos is the keynote of this poem. But the poet does not employ any particular device to arouse the pity of his readers. He merely communicates certain facts. The facts themselves arouse the desired effects on the readers. The poet has used the weapon of irony against the poets who composed poems about the river. These poets just repeat the facts given by the old poets. They do not care to know the actual havoc caused by the floods. He says that the poets still sing but followed the old poets and sing only of floods. The poet thus satirizes the absence of human concern in the poets, that they do not have real sympathy for human beings while composing their poems. For example, the poetry, but no one spoke in verse, not in poems, of the pregnant woman drowned with perhaps twins in her kicking at blank walls even before birth. Means they do not concentrate on the real sufferings, the sorrows felt by the victims. Some of the details are given to us in the opening lines about the river being reduced to a narrow stream during summer season. The straw and the women's hair blocking the water gates, the patches of repair upon the bridges enhance the realism. Means we believe what the poet has depicted. This is the reality in India. There are a couple of original, though not very convincing similes in the poem. The wet stones glisten like sleepy crocodiles. This is a simile in which wet stones are compared with sleepy crocodiles. While the dry stones look like 7 water buffaloes roaming about in the sun, in the brisking in the sun. These are original similes, and they put the idea into mind clearly, though some may say they are not convincing like that. But what the poet wants to say is clear through these original similes. The poet does not follow the conventional way of composing poems. The poem is irregular in form. The rhyme and meter are also irregular. That is, in traditional poems, there used to be rhyme scheme, meter, but in this poem we do not find. It appears as if it is a prose work, as the poet has spoken directly, addresses somebody. No line begins with capital letters. In traditional poems, every line begins with capital letter, but here it is not followed. The poem is not so much about as about the attitude of people who favor sensationalism over humanism. The poet uses irony to express the callousness of old and new poets who romanticize the floods and ignore the human aspect of loss and suffering caused by the flood. The idea is they do not concentrate the feelings, the sorrow really experienced, or the sorrow through which they pass is not given emphasis or is not described at all. The author is angry against the orthodoxy of the Hindu religion. The old poets represent the old leaders and clerks, etc. The new poets representing the followers and precede, who in turn followed what the old ones told them and taught them. Means they do not try to look at the whole scenario from a different point of view, but they follow what has been followed so far. The author is angry and lashes out because he feels they are wrong. He feels they do not see the errors in what they teach and only focus on the little bit of good, not all the bad, and that the good neither outweighs the bad nor is purely good nor lasts. In the poem, he expresses this in saying that the poets speak only of the floods, and in saying that the river is only good in one season, and in that season it destroyed 3 houses in a village, carried away a woman with perfect identical twins, her womb, and 2 cows named Gopi and Brinda. It's the repetition. The old poet used to say something that just like nowadays in newspaper we say, yeah, this is so much damage has been caused due to election or overall peaceful. So 5 people can like that. Means the human concern is absent. So we can conclude with the comments of R. Parsarthi, who says that a river is a poem on the Vaikai which flows through Madurai, a city that has for about 2000 years been the seat of Tamil culture. And then he adds that as an evocation of a river, the poem succeeds admirably. He further says that the river becomes a point of departure for ironically contrasting the relative attitude of the old and new Tamil poets, both of whom are exposed for their carelessness to the suffering which is so obvious caused by the flood. Means they do not concentrate, they do not want to say anything or represent or present in their poems, but they are traditional in outlook and they express or they write or uses only those things which have been used by the poets of the past. So this is wrong and the poet has criticized them. It is a pungent satire on the mentality or attitude of the old and new poets. Thank you very much.